Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode number 307 of the Comic Watchers Show. He's Chad, I'm Matt, and this is our show where we gab about comics. So, our guest this episode is comics critic Tiffany Babb. Tiffany, thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're like we were just talking about before the show, the comics criticism, comics journalism, whatever you want to call it, field is small. So it's always great to get to talk to somebody from that tiny little pond that we all inhabit.
It definitely is.
Yes, most definitely. But Chad, I'm going to kick it over to you. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, and I hope I get this right. Tiffany, you've kickstarted the Comics Courier twice and are getting ready to do the Comics Staple.
I've been the courier 3 times.
Okay.
And yeah, the staple Kickstarter is starting April 1st.
Okay. So tell us about Comics Staple. I was reading that it was a zine, 12-page, black and white. What more is there to know about Comic Staples?
So it is, I was actually blue skying about this earlier today, which is, it's my weird answer to the death of comics Twitter. Like my soul still lives in like the heyday of you're on comics Twitter, you feel connected to the rest of the industry, you feel like in the know with what new books you should be reading, all of that stuff. That feels gone now. Like we're all kind of splintered across the internet. There are books that I know I would love that I just don't hear about. There are books that people who followed authors and writers and artists for ages, like the book comes out and they've completely missed it. And so the staple for me, I'm a print person. So I love having things in the mail. I love reading things with my hands and not scrolling. And this is kind of what I can do to keep people up to date. I put together this incredible cast of writers. And we're going to be mailing into people's inboxes. See, I'm trained to say that now. In mailing into people's mailboxes every month starting in September.
That is so cool. Now, people are funding the Kickstarter. They're actually funding for a subscription for themselves. Am I right?
Yes, it'll be a 6-month subscription.
Okay. What are the advantages of going old school through the snail mail?
The advantages are, I think, like you have a captive audience if the audience wants to be there. When you're reading something online, there's always kind of that tendency to like, oh, I'm going to go click and check my email real quick. I'm going to go, I don't know, check my social media. And when you have like a physical zine, that's something that you can throw in your bag and read while you're waiting in line at the cafe or whatever, wherever you are. It's going to be small. It's very DIY. Mm-hmm. It's going to have that DIY aesthetic. And everything, all the information you need for the month is going to be in those pages.
Very, very cool.
So,
Chad, go ahead.
So one of the questions I always like to ask is, how did you get started in the comics as a reader, and then where you find yourself now within the industry?
Good question. So I growing up, I read Archie, I read Calvin and Hobbes, newspaper comics like Marmaduke, that kind of stuff. I didn't really read graphic novels or superhero comics until college, like high school, college time. And if you know anything about me, I get really obsessive. And suddenly I'm like writing my honors thesis about comics. And I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I just spend a lot of time writing about comics. And when you start doing that and you stick around and you start making friends and you just kind of, things snowball. Like that's kind of how a career starts. And then you turn around and you're just like, wow, it's been like more than a decade. Time has passed. And that's kind of how it happens. And now I've got the Courier, which is a twice-a-year print newspaper of kind of long-form comics criticism, and now I have the Staple, which is going to be more newsy stuff coming out every month. And that's kind of my interaction with the industry right now. I'm an Eisner judge this year, so I'm doing a lot of reading. But that's kind of where I am in the comics world.
When it comes to being a critic, are there any particular rules of thumb that you try to adhere to other than just it feels good or it feels right, sort of?
Yeah. I have a lot of rules. The first rule in comics criticism definitely is I always try to consider the workings of every aspect of the comic. So, like, unless I'm doing kind of just a general essay, I'm not going to just talk about plot. I'm also going to talk about the images. Obviously, the art plays such an important role in comics. The lettering, the coloring, like that's all applicable. As a critic in general, I always approach the work with what's the creator trying to do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that colors whether or not I like something, but I think it's important to see what someone's attempting to do, to see if it lands and to see if it's accomplishing that. Then I also think about I think people often think that critics have this black and white thing where it's just like this thing's good or this is bad, but I'm very much a critic who follows taste, like my own tastes. And I have very specific tastes. I've been arguing with a friend recently. I think Casablanca is really corny. Like, I don't think it's like a great film. I think there are parts of it that are great. But that, to me, I understand that that's taste, right? I wouldn't go around and say everybody who likes Casablanca is dumb or wrong, even though I think they're wrong and that I do think they're dumb. So I think I'm very aware that I'm writing to my taste, and I have to back that up with evidence and argument, because what's the point of writing if you're not doing that? But that is always in my mind when I'm writing.
Okay. And do you feel like, like you said, intent matters, right? So if you're judging, or not judging, but criticizing a Marvel comic versus, say, some tiny independent book, are you going to use a different set of standards or guidelines, based on the intent?
Not necessarily, because in my opinion, good is good and bad is bad, right?
Sure.
Either it's a good comic or it's a bad comic, and I don't want to give people like too much slack, because at the end of the day, like, my responsibility is to my reader. Like, I'm not here on purpose to like hurt anyone's feelings, but I'm also not here to like save people's feelings, right? Like, I have to be honest. So I try to be as honest as I can be. But like, when I mean by like intention, I kind of mean like genre conventions. Like, you wouldn't go and read a romance comic and say, well, it could have been a little more creative with that ending. Wouldn't it have been better if two people didn't get together? Because like, I have to understand like what's actually going on here. And you see this a lot with critics who like temporarily work in fields that they have no experience in. Like, you'll have like a literary critic write a review about a horror novel and like just not get it. And that's because they're not versed in the rules. And there are rules in every single piece of art that has ever been created. Whether or not things follow rules or what the rules are, that's debatable. But like, understanding that, let's say in a comic, like a splash page is supposed to evoke a certain type of feeling versus a very small panel, right? Understand. And some of that is instinctual, right? But a lot of it isn't. Like, we think it is because we read a lot of comics. But if you give someone who's never read a comic, usually they're going to be confused, because we've kind of been steeped in how to read comics. And so if someone who's never read a comic before comes in, reads a comic, gives it a bad review because let's say they think that the panel should have been larger. That you do see that with criticism, and I try to be aware, especially when I'm writing about something that I don't have as much experience in. I try to be aware of my limitations.
So, how did you get started as a critic, or somebody who does this type of things with comics?
So I was in college. I was writing any chance I had. I was writing my term papers about comics, and around that time, I was on Twitter, and Women Write About Comics website was tweeting that they had this academic section of the website. And so I was like, well, why don't I recycle these articles I've already written? And so started publishing there. And Steve Morris, who now works at 2000 AD, he also has a website called Shelf Dust. It's great. Everyone should check it out. He was like, hey, I liked your writing at Women Write About Comics. You should come write for Shelf Dust. So I started writing for Shelf Dust. And then you just, as you build up your bylines, you're able to take those articles and go and pitch other people, and that's how I got started.
Very cool.
So when you were, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I was going to say, when you came up with the idea to, do the courier and all that, how did you go about building your team or selecting people to contribute?
That's easier on my part because I've worked with so many writers. As an editor, I've worked with so many writers. I've also read so much comics criticism, like being in the space for a decade. You meet people, you know their writing. And so a good chunk of these people are people that I've worked with before. Some of them are not. And then in every issue, I've been doing a completely new team, which has been really fun because I get to work with more people, and it also helps the newspaper, I think, feel fresh. And so I just kind of reached out to people I wanted to work with and asked them to write for me.
And besides yourself, it looks like there's a team, because I saw on the Kickstarter page that our good friend Dave Baker is involved.
He is. He will be doing a fun. I feel like I can't speak to it that clearly because the concept has changed, but it will be like an interesting take on fun and weird comics history. And he's going to be doing a page every month, and I'm very excited to read it.
And who else have you selected for the? I guess for the first issue.
Yeah. So, well, this is going to be our writing team in general. Obviously, things might change because 6 months is a big commitment. This isn't just asking people to write one article. But the starting lineup is going to be David Brothers, Oliver Sava, Dave Baker, who we just mentioned, David Harper, Susanna Polo, Rob Salkowitz, Omar Valdivieso, Zach Quaintance, and Jim McDermott. It's a good list of people. And I'm very excited. There are people here who I've been friends with, but I haven't worked with. So it'll be exciting to kind of work on a monthly project.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, so we talked about kind of the advantages of doing the zine format. What were the advantages with the courier of doing more of a newspaper format?
I mean, this is going to sound really cynical, but the advantage is the branding and the fact that it's different. Like there's something so lovely about reading a newspaper, and I love it. I love picking up a newspaper and having it in my hands and flipping through it. And I think a lot of people also want that physical feeling and to be able to read some stuff and like turn off the computer and step away. And with the newspaper, you also have the aesthetics of a newspaper. So we also got to wrap a lot of that in to the Kickstarter. But like the reason, I mean, I love print and that's why I'm doing print. But like a good chunk of why I think people are also interested in it is because it's not like another website. Like if I launched the Comic Staple as a website, I don't know how much support I would have behind it. Or maybe there'd be a lot of support, but how many people would be going to read articles every day? Versus like I'm physically mailing you something in the mailbox. Like you can't ignore that, right? And people love to get mail, right? Who doesn't love to open a mailbox and you pull something out and it's like something you actually enjoy?
As opposed to junk mail or a bill.
Yes, exactly. So the courier is the same way, and the courier is less news. There's no news in it. The whole kind of point is I'm letting writers write kind of what is not marketable anywhere. It's like, what's the one thing you want to write about that no one will let you write about? And so because it comes out twice a year and because it's a newspaper and it's not tied to the production cycle of the business of comics, there's this freedom of letting writers do what they want. And I think the vibe of the newspaper is really kind of fitting for that kind of project.
Mm-hmm. How do you keep it current with that?
The staple?
No, actually, the courier, I should say.
Oh, it's not current. So it's kind of like, so some people are writing about new comics, but there's also, I'm trying to think of the oldest comic that's been written about is The Yellow Kid, which is one of the first comics ever created in the US, right? So things are not meant to be current. It's meant to be kind of a slow read for people who love comics and love to read writing about comics.
Okay. Do you have I don't know, a scope of stuff that you want to cover? Is it a free for all?
It's a free for all. The only thing that I keep in mind is I don't want too much of one thing. So I don't want 12 articles about contemporary superhero comics. But if someone wants to write about the 80s and someone wants to write about like the 70s and someone wants to write about now, that's a little different. But if everybody was writing about like absolute Batman, it'd be not the vibe for the Courier. So I just keep an eye on trying to have a diverse range of topics, and that's it. Other than that, it is free for all.
Okay. Do you find as the editor for and publisher, I guess, for the Courier, that you've had to reject anything? I mean, without getting into specifics or names,
Not really.
No.
I mean, these are all writers who are tested and proven, and I don't think anyone would do anything like wildly offensive.
Sure.
There's nothing. I'm trying to think if there are any pitches. Honestly, I think for the Courier, the only pitches that all kind of shake around a bit is if people, and this is true of editing anything, people sometimes come in with an article with too wide of a scope. And they'll say, well, I'm going to write about, this has not happened, but this is an example. I'm going to write about mouse and history, right? And it's like, okay, you're not going to be able to do that in 1,200 words. Like, let's
this is
figure
my
out.
Exactly.
That's like a series of books, right? So what can we do to like narrow this down and make this an article that can actually be written and published? So that's pretty much all I'm doing. But often I don't usually even have to do that with a Courier just because these writers are so good.
Awesome.
I don't know if you mentioned it while I had to step away for a second, but one of our contributors has contributed to the Courier, Lillian.
Yeah, Lillian.
Yeah, Lillian Hawkwinder.
A really great article.
And they're one of our great and long-standing writers too.
There you go.
So yeah, it just goes to show you work hard and you can break it anywhere.
Exactly, and I think that's issue 1. If anyone's looking for that piece.
Yeah, and Dan, to circle back around a little bit, Lillian has also contributed to Shelf Dust.
There you go. It is a small world, really.
It really is. Comics journalism is a very small world. And unfortunately, the conversation gets dominated by the more corporate-run sites who will remain nameless, but we know who they are. And the real work, the in the trenches stuff, tends to get overlooked. So, with that spirit in mind, how do you plan to get the comic staple, and by extension, Comics Courier, the limelight that it deserves?
We've been doing all right. Like, I'm not looking to be like, we're not making money here. No one's making money in comics criticism. I want the people who, like, my big goal is for anyone who wants this, for them to know about it so they can buy it if they want it. I'm not trying to like sell millions of copies, right? So my goal is just to make sure that people know that we exist. So if this is their vibe, that they can check out the site, pledge the Kickstarter. But it's not for everyone. I want it to be a broad audience, right? We're covering all sorts of comics in the staple. We cover all sorts of comics in the Courier. And the staple is more for, I guess, a regular reader because it's information that people want, whereas a Courier is for a very specific niche audience. So I'm not expecting the Courier to have like a gajillion readers. I really appreciate the readers that we do have. So I am quite happy with how things are already. Nervous about the next Kickstarter just because you always are, because you never know how things are going to go. But so far, I think I'm quite pleased with how people have come out to support these projects.
I was going to say we've followed and helped get the word out for the Courier issues, and it looks like it got a really good response that when you've done it. Have you noticed anything? Not that the stable campaign hasn't started, but has there been any? You said you didn't know what to expect. Have there been things that you've learned before that you're hoping to apply to this one?
I mean, everything. I hadn't done a big Kickstarter before the Courier, so I learned everything and I'm using everything now. I think a big part of it is, especially with social media now, I mean, this is a problem we're trying to solve, which is people just don't see things. Like, I had a friend who wrote for one of the couriers, not know the third issue was coming out. And I was just like, but you're also on Blue Sky and we're friends on Facebook and I'm posting almost every day. Like, how did you not see it? And it's just like you have to post so much more now. And it kind of feels like spammy if you're not careful. I think that is a big thing, which is with the first courier, Twitter was still usable and I wanted to use it back then. Now less so. I'm not so much on Twitter. So there's no algorithm on Blue Sky, so it's just not pushing quite as much. So you just have to post more, which is a struggle. Other than that, I think just talking to people in real life can go a long way. I'm going to be at WonderCon this weekend.
Nice.
I have these little mini zines to hand out. Let's say, what is the comic staple? A lot of that kind of thing. Talking to retailers this time. I'm going to talk to more retailers. That kind of thing.
So there's a lot of old school energy that you're bringing to this. Are you sure that you're not Gen X? Because I remember doing zines in the '90s.
We're bringing zines back.
Music scene and yeah, do what?
We're bringing zines back.
I love it. Lots of word of mouth, lots of putting it in people's hands.
Yes.
So, given that, since the comics took off in the 90s, there's been various comic book related magazines and publications. What do you feel some of the mistakes that they may have made or caused them to go by the wayside? Because I know for me, I pretty much still have every issue of Wizard magazine, and I think I stopped buying it first when they ruined the outcome of 52, and then when they went from the square bound format to the more magazine type. I don't know if there's a question in there, but
I understand what you're saying. It's hard to speak to it because the staple was born out of this moment, which is post Twitter, post social media almost. Like, we're trying to fix the problems that social media was supposed to solve before social media splintered with print. And pre that, like, a lot of these magazines failed because the internet came. Right? It wasn't necessarily anyone's. I mean, obviously, some people did things that ruined their reputation. Sometimes there was quality issues. Sometimes people can't run business. But I'm not speaking to anyone specific with that. But a lot of times it was just like how many magazines are successful now compared to like in the 90s? And that's because blogs existed and websites existed and it's cheaper to do things online. And then everybody did it. And now it's more difficult to do things online. Like, there's just so much saturation of stuff. Everything's difficult to get to. And Google doesn't get you places anymore. Like, you can't find things that you're looking for, which is why I think for me, the staple is my very low tech reaction to kind of the tech breaking down.
Mm-hmm. Do you see maybe this being a part of a larger backlash against the death of comics Twitter and by extension social media toxicity, et cetera?
Maybe. I do it because, like, I miss comics Twitter. I don't know if I'm responding to a whole moment. I know that a lot of people have had this problem, though. I've spoken to a lot of comics creators who are just like, we have audiences, we just can't connect to them. I've talked to a lot of fans who are just like, I know there's books out there, I just don't know what to buy anymore. Publishers don't know how to reach out to readers. Like, there's all this divide. And because there's just so much online and there's not necessarily a single place to go to get everything you want, I think for me, the answer is voices that you trust, which is kind of the theme that I went into when I chose this team, which is who would be the people that I would trust to tell me what books to buy, right? And I don't have necessarily the same taste as all of the writers who are writing for this stable.
Well, no.
But that's the good thing, right? Everybody's kind of bringing their own vibe in, and people trust these writers because they're good and they've been doing it for years and they're experts at what they write about. And so I think that is like an appeal to like expertise is always behind whatever I do, because I believe in expertise. But I mean, I believe in democratization as well, but not everybody's opinions are worth the same, especially when it comes to criticism.
Now, is there a favorite interview you've done in your, or piece that you've written in your time as a comics journalist that you're really proud of?
Sure, I'm sure there's a ton. The first one that comes to mind was one that I wrote for How to Love Comics, and I think we republished in Panel by Panel, which was about Archie and Americana, and like growing up reading Archie. And when you grow up and what you read and what you watch kind of tells you how to be a human. It's like, oh, this is the normal thing to do. This is what people do. And like
I still talk like a Buffy character.
Exactly, right? You learned it from Buffy. But this piece on Archie was also about kind of how it approaches diversity in kind of a weird way, and how like there's a lot of conflicting feelings and experiences there, where like a lot of places where people of color or queer people are in the most danger are places like Riverdale, right? Whereas like Riverdale's always kind of, and I understand it's part of the context of the story as well, but it kind of has this niceness that like none of our main characters could ever be a racist, right?
Right.
It's always kind of the out of towner. And like when that happens, like it also kind of absolves people from looking at their own internalized racism or their own feelings, because they're just like, well, I'm a good guy and those people are bad guys. And so I wrote about that, which I quite liked writing about. I've written a lot of the stuff for Panel by Panel. I really am proud of. And then I quite liked the piece that I wrote on, in the first issue of the Courier, I wrote a piece on How to Read Nancy, which is a seminal essay on kind of comics criticism and formalist breakdowns by Mark Newgard and Paul Karasik. And I titled it How to Read Nancy, which I'm very proud of. It's probably my best title I've ever done. So if anyone wants to read that, that's in the first issue of the Courier.
How do you feel that you've grown as a writer, and since from the beginning to now?
I think you just get better over time. When you're starting out, everything's more difficult because you just don't have experience. So it takes you so much longer to get to where you need to go. And I still get stuck in spots. Like sometimes it's like, this is one essay, why is it taking me a week? Because like, we're humans, we have brains that don't want to work sometimes. But in general, I write much faster than I used to. I understand what I'm thinking way more than I used to. I think I used to do the mouse history thing where it's just like, I want to write about this vague thing and then write my way into it. But that took forever, right? Because you're just kind of writing and deleting your way into a point. Whereas now I usually don't start writing until I know what my point is. There's that. I think experience is the big thing. Confidence in my taste as well when you're starting out. Also, just when you're young, I think there's a lot of hesitancy to where it's just like, well, what if other people like it and I don't like it? And now I'm just like, well, sucks to suck, man. Like clearly my opinion is the correct one. So that just comes with age, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I know I've written reviews that had like full-blown asides on the history of this character and why this matters and why this comic is wrong for having offended my sensibilities, blah 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 blah. And yeah, I don't do that anymore as a writer. It's
Yeah.
tedious. You know, it's I don't know about you, but I've kind of hit this point with my writing as an unpaid comics journalist that I just want to get to the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that feels better. That feels more accessible to more people because, like, to borrow a word that you use, democratization is what we want to look at. We want the most people possible to feel accessible to our work.
Sure.
So Chad, let that be a lesson to you.
Hey, I've told you that when I write reviews, the art is good. You know, no, I do find myself, you know, I hope I'm getting better, but I found myself getting into more summarizing the story and kind of taking a critical look at it. Although I think probably my best one was the All Along the Watchtower Justice League one, and it's like, oh, here's how it compares to the song, and or could compare. And then it was a rabbit hole, and it's just
Sometimes rabbit holes can be good things, though, because
Yeah.
they take us to unexpected places.
Totally.
So,
what do you feel are the biggest, besides what we've been talking about, are the other challenges that the comic industry itself faces?
Everything. I mean, it's not one or two things, right? It's
Mhm.
money, it's distribution, it's and this is where I get on my soapbox, which is everybody's mad at Timothée Chalamet for saying those things about the ballet and opera, and he was right. Like his point was not that like ballet and opera aren't important. His point was like nobody watches them, and nobody does. Like people
Yeah.
do, but in the context of the world, and in the same way, like we think comics are really important, and we do have some sort of cultural cachet, right? Because film pulls from comics, but that doesn't mean that's comics cultural cachet, right? That's film's cultural cachet. You walk down the street, your general person doesn't know even the most famous comics, right? Like we talk about Absolute Batman, regular person on the street does not know what Absolute Batman is.
right.
And that's hard. It's hard to maintain an industry when you don't have this wide level of recognition because your audience is smaller. People talk about France and places like Japan and China where a lot more people read comics, and it's easier to run a business in those countries, I'm sure, because you have a bigger audience. So there's that, and there's just a lot of stagnation. I'm not speaking about any specific companies, but a lot of companies act like they did in the 80s or the 90s, and the world has changed and industries have changed and sales has changed. And I just went to Comics Pro this year. I usually don't talk to retailers. It was very fun too, and learned a ton about just what people's daily lives are in the retail business.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I saw was just not a ton of the people I talked to, at least, were on social media.
Interesting.
And like now every cafe has a social media account, right? Or like if they were just kind of like posting opening and closing hours. They weren't really trying to engage with the young audience, which is kind of what you have to do nowadays. Like do memes. And then I was talking to someone and I was just like, well, you could just do like the Bridgerton dance. This is just an example. And the person was just like, well, I don't watch Bridgerton. I was like, okay, you don't have to understand the meme to meme. And I think that's kind of the thing where like we come from a place where being a fan is so important. And I think it is important in a lot of things. And like a lot of comic shop owners are fans. A lot of people in the business are fans, but that doesn't mean that you need to be a fan of something to kind of use it in your marketing. Just stuff like that. And that I think happens in little ways throughout the industry, from the critics to the readers. I mean, you see readers do this stuff all the time, right? To the publishers, to everything, right? It'd be nice to have some more young blood.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Like,
And even I'm too old for some of this stuff. Like I don't understand a lot of this stuff. I went to a concert yesterday. Everyone there was like their early 20s. And to be fair, it was like a Wednesday night. So like that's kind of who goes out on Wednesday nights. But I
well,
was just like, oh, this is like I'm too old for this now. And so even young, like you can get younger 20 somethings into these businesses.
So, are there any creators that you are kind of vibing on these days, or following, or you know, think that are at the top of their game?
Sure. I think Chris Samney's always at the top of his game. But I'm excited about his new stuff. I read More Weight by Ben Wiki. That was incredible. It's about Salem
Yeah.
and like the one man who was like pressed to death with stones.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a history of his life, but it's also a history of the witch trials, but also a history of contemporary tourist Salem. And it's so fascinating and it's so interesting. It's a history, but it's also cultural criticism in a way.
Yeah.
And I was really blown away by that book. And then I really loved Levi's new book, Canon, as well.
I got to interview Ben at New York Comic Con this past year, and that was fun.
Yeah,
it was
it's a great
interesting.
book.
So how do you, one of the big, if we're talking about big stories in comics of the last 10, 15 years or so, or more really, the proliferation of manga in the United States would have to be towards the top of the list for me. Do you partake, or do you have opinions on this, or?
I have opinions, which is that you're right, it is becoming huge, and I think it would really behoove our side as a comics industry to sell more manga. I think a lot of people don't. And I'm like, well, this is just good. But again, it's that fan thing. It's like, if I don't read it, I don't want to sell it. And it's just like, there's a market out there. Like, you don't have to love banana smoothies to sell a banana smoothie. I don't partake that much. I am right now because of the Eisner stuff. Read a lot of, I read more manga than maybe in my entire life this year. And it's lovely. It's not quite to my taste. Some of it really is. But I think in general, the majority of it is not to my taste. But it sells and people like it. Like, if there's a market, I think the industry should, and people are trying. I'm not saying people aren't trying. Like, you can see big publishers start to take on manga projects and stuff like that, or more, or hire manga artists, that kind of thing. But I think they could try faster. It's just my like bitter 2 cents.
Well, one of the things I like about it, this wave of manga that's taken over fandom in the last however many years, is it's getting people that might not have otherwise read a comic to read comics,
Sure.
and that's important.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not for me, like you said, but it's still important. Like, if I was, I used to work part-time in a comic book store, and I used to tell the owner all the time, you need to order more manga. Do it. And, well, we don't sell it. It just sits here and collects dust. It's not selling because you don't have it.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you it's going to end. Yeah, it was just a disagreement that we had. But it's like, obviously the audience is there, and it's changing how we interact with comics. Look at DC's Pocket Comics that they started last year. For $9.99, you can get this whole mini trade paperback. Like, that is very, very clearly modeled after
manga shaped.
And yeah, that's like you said. I wish they would learn some of these lessons faster, but here we are in the year of our Lord 2026, and manga's not going anywhere.
Having been writing about comics, have you had the desire or want to have a story you want to try to tell through the comic format?
I've done some. So I've done like a couple short stories. I wrote for a while on one of the Tapas originals, and then I launched the beginning of a webtoon with Pocket Comics, and then they decided they weren't gonna do the U.S. market and left, which was very sad because that comic was really cool. It was called School Spirit. I'm interested in a way where it's like I'm interested in a lot of things. It's not like a life goal of mine to write comics. I'm as a person, I've tried to do as many things in life as possible just because I think that's the point of life. Like I'm weaving dish towels now, and I oil paint, and my friend just gifted me one of those kind of wood burner things where you can kind of engrave onto wood. Like I'm a person who likes to try new things. Oh, I did a diary comic for a couple of years. So like it is interesting, and I would love to do it if the opportunity came out, but it's not something that I'm pursuing, and it's not something that's like central. Like I would consider that more just like not my quote unquote like comics career stuff.
Right. I understand.
So, what are some current comics or graphic novels that you're currently impressed with the most?
I'm only reading stuff from 2025 right now because I can only read Eisner stuff. I'm reading that, and I'm reading some baseball books that I'm covering for my baseball site.
Cool.
But that's all I can read. I like someone actually just sent me a PDF of his book that's coming out in the fall, and I've been waiting for this book to come out, and I'm just like I can't even read it. I have no time. It's so frustrating. I feel like all the good books are coming in just as I get busy.
Of course they are.
Yeah, it's always like that.
So you're an Eisner judge, which is a phenomenal honor. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. What does that process look like behind the scenes for you, being the new kid on the block?
So it's just a lot of reading so far. In about a few weeks from now, we're all going to go to San Diego. We're going to have meetings all day and debate books, which I'm very excited to do. But so far, it's literally just reading on your own. I let the lovely woman in charge of the Eisners now, Laura, know which books I want, and then she pulls them off the spreadsheet, puts them in a box, and mails them to me, and then I read them and I mail them back, and I swap out. I'm also checking out a lot of stuff out of the library just to save postage. But it's just reading as much as you humanly can, because there's no way to read every book, because we're talking about like thousands of books, but you want to like give everyone a chance, and to be honest, also some of these books are not comics. That surprised me. So you kind of have to weed those out too. Like people submit things as comics and they're not comics. But it's just a lot of reading so far. I take notes, usually, like especially if something really impresses me. But beyond that, so far that is the extent of my experience. When I know more, I can tell more.
Right on.
How did you get selected to be a judge?
That is a good question. I don't know. I was emailed one day. I got an email asking me if I wanted to be a judge, and I was just like, "Oh, this is very exciting." Like it's something that I've had friends do, and it is an honor, and it is special, and it's exciting, and it's just a nice thing to do, and it's a good way to also. And I haven't been reading so many like new comics, and it was like a really great way to catch up on 1 year of just reading as much stuff as you can. So I was very pleased, and I'm very grateful. But I have no idea why or how I was chosen.
Okay.
Wheel of Fate.
Yes.
Email selection works fine.
Yes.
Mine must have got lost in the spam folder or something. So, what advice would you have for someone who's looking to get into the comic book critiquing field?
Sure. Two prongs. First of all, never expect to make any money off of it. And that doesn't mean you won't ever make any money, but you can't expect it because it's usually most likely not going to come. This is just not an industry that can sustain that. There's probably about 5 people who make like livable money off of this work. And they've all been doing it for quite a while. The second thing is to read a lot of comics and things that are not comics. I would suggest to read criticism of other mediums. I know nothing about music, like classical music, but sometimes I read criticism about classical music, just to get a hold of the language and how people look at things, and you start to see what you like and what you don't like in writing, and then you'll start to develop your own voice and your own taste. I feel like people try to develop their own voice too quickly. They like sit down and like, I need to come up with my voice, when that's just something that grows with you as you read and consume more things. When I was starting out, I read every possible, like I would go to the local comic shop and I would grab a stack of 25-cent comics and just read them out of order. Like it'd be like a one shot or like issue 18 out of a random X-Men series, and I just read them. And over time you just you gain this knowledge even though you're not feeling it, and you kind of gain understanding of pace and tone and dialogue and all these other things that you need to know about as a critic. Then read other critics who are publishing now in the field as well, and then just try to publish. Like if you want, try to go to some of the sites like yours, pitch some articles, or put stuff up on your own blog, or make videos. People are making videos. I just got on like social video recently, like a couple months ago. So I'm making videos now too. But that's a huge thing now. People make videos, so you don't necessarily need to be quote unquote writing prose anymore. But find what works for you and just work really hard at it. Like I forget sometimes how hard I worked when I was starting out. I was cleaning out like a cupboard last year, and I found these notebooks, and I was like, what are these notebooks? I opened them and I had like diagrammed pages of comics, just like,
oh wow,
like what was the size of the page, how many panels, what were the size of the panels, like how many story beats were on the page. And like I don't even remember doing this. And that's the kind of work that like doesn't get published, obviously, but clearly at some point that would have sunk in to like my eye, right? And when I read something, kind of being able to tell what's good and what's bad, or what I like and what I don't, doing that kind of grunt work ahead of time, and just learn. I think learning is always learning and always looking at everything. Like, and the cool thing about being a critic is you can write criticism about anything. And some people just write comics criticism, and that's great. But like I'm writing criticism about baseball. Like that's crazy, right? But it's also not. Like you can do that, and it'll grow your muscles for your other stuff too.
Sure. Yeah, I was reading your bio. You've got an impressive resume of sites that you've written for,
Thank you.
presumably for more than just comics. But yeah, baseball. Didn't see that one coming into this conversation.
Yeah, I have a baseball website called The Fan Files, and I write there every week. And so all my short form video now is also all baseball stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
Who's your favorite team, and who do you think, do you have a prediction for this year's season?
My favorite team is the Angels, the Los Angeles Angels, and my prediction is that we're going to be very bad. But I'm hoping, so far, I think we're the only team who's never gotten 100 losses in a single season. And I'm just hoping we can keep that. My optimistic prediction is that Mike Trout will have an MVP year, and he will prove everyone who thinks he's old and washed wrong. But I don't know how true that's going to be. I feel like it will be true in my heart, but I don't know about my brain.
So is there things that you've learned from writing about baseball that you were able to apply to comics, or things that you learned from writing about comics that you've applied to your baseball critiquing?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's like tools necessarily, but I had written about comics on the baseball site. There was a lot of crossover. I was actually just on gosh, now the podcast is called 22 Panels yesterday, and it was like all comics people who like baseball. So I've written about graphic novels that had a baseball focus. Mad Cave published a baseball vampire book this year, so I did an excerpt of that. I interviewed Mark Chiarello, who used to be the art director for DC Comics, and he's written a couple and drawn a couple baseball books. So there's a lot of crossover here and there, and that's also nice too, because then it's like your two interests, right, are in one place, and you get to write about them, which is nice.
Yeah, most definitely.
So if you had to pick one, comics or baseball?
That's hard because baseball is so new for me. So I only got into baseball about 3 years ago. And so the new thing's always going to be more exciting just because you're still learning and you're still kind of figuring it out. And comics is very old hat. But that's just because I've been doing it for so long. Like if I was discovering comics now, I'd feel very different. And I love comics, and I love so many parts of the business and so many parts of the industry, but I also hate a lot of it. Like, it's not a great environment all the time, and with time and experience, that clouds your feelings about something.
Makes sense. So coming back around to where we started the conversation about the comic staple, tell us a little bit more of the details of when the Kickstarter begins, what your funding goals are there stretch goals, that sort of thing.
So the Kickstarter begins April 1st and it runs through the month of April. The goal, I think, is $7,000. I need to double check that. I don't remember. I'm bad with numbers. But there will not be any stretch goals, I think, just because I want to keep it really simple. The thing about the staple is I'm printing and stapling it and folding it in my garage. And the courier I had printed because it's a newspaper and I don't have the capacity for that.
Sure.
But because I and friends, Tiffany and friends, have to mail this out every month. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible just because we don't want to die in the process of getting this thing out. And I'm really excited. It is very fun to kind of have that DIY. We're all getting together. It is like the olden days, right? Where we're all getting together with I'll buy pizza for everyone who's helping out. But it's also just like, ooh, that's a lot of paperwork to be folding and stapling. So it is. I feel very bittersweet about it, which is just like, it's so cool we're doing it this way, but also I'm just like, I can't believe we're doing it this way.
It's old school.
Yes, it is old school.
And have you set the reward levels yet for?
So yes and yes. I don't think I've announced them yet, but I can kind of tease that there will be a print. It'll be a little print, a mini print, and then there will also be at a certain level like a screen printed patch, like a black and white screen printed patch. Because again, it's that DIY aesthetic, it's that punk mindset. So I wanted everything to be of that vibe, where it's just kind of like black and white and fun.
Okay.
Very cool. Well, do you have? Oh, Chad, I'm sorry. You look like you were about to say something important.
No, I was going to say if you didn't have another question, I was just going to give her a chance to give one final pitch for everything.
That's exactly what I was going to do. So, great.
Well, I'm happy to pitch. So the comic staple, it is literally, in my opinion, the one place you'll have to go to be kept in the know for what's going on in comics that month. You'll know the coolest books that are coming out. You'll read some reviews. There'll be an interview with an artist. Rob Salkowitz is writing a news roundup from the last month's news. It's really kind of a love letter to being up to date, which sounds crazy, but like it is just trying to bridge the gap between the reader and the comics that they want to know about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have so much faith in these writers. Like, these are all people, Some of these people aren't people that I'm even like friends with, right? We will be friends soon. But like these are people who I've been reading their work for years, since before I even was a critic. And I have so much faith in their writing and their taste. And I really think this is like the one thing, this and your website, of course, will be the two places that you need to go to kind of be in the loop for comics news and what's coming out in comics.
There you go. I love it. Well,
Oh, I was going to say, can people find you on social media? I think you said you weren't on Twitter that much, but you were on Blue Sky.
I'm on Blue Sky at Exploding Arrow, .bluesky. Whatever that is. The Comic Staple is at comicstaple.com. The Comics Courier is at comicscourier.com. The fanfiles.com I just mentioned. We've got a lot of websites going on. And then if you want to see my baseball short form video stuff, that's all at the Fanfiles on Instagram and TikTok.
awesome. Well, Tiffany Babb, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
This has been fun.
Yeah, this has been great. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank
you. Yeah, of course. You can get on Kickstarter now, and you can help fund the Comic Staple, which you totally should because it's amazing.
No,
and it's
you can't fund it until April 1st.
But you can hit the button that says notify me on launch.
Yeah, that's right. You can help download the pre-launch numbers.
So there you go. Well, anyway, thank you all for listening tonight. It's been a great show. It's tough out there right now in the world, so get out there and do something good. Support local businesses, support local comic book store, local music. Just get out there and do something good in the world. Whatever you do, just don't be a jerk about it or about anything. Thank you, and until next time, Chad, who do we have next week?
I don't know.
Okay, well, it's a mystery.
TBA.
We'll see you next
TBA.